This is the magicwordpodcast.com.
Hello, this is Scott Wells for the magicwordpodcast.com. Let me first of all thank all of you listeners who introduced yourselves to me when I was at the last three conventions. I've attended the SAM convention in New Orleans, followed by Abbott's in Colon, Michigan, and then Magic Live. So I've seen a lot of you, and I had a wonderful time getting a chance to chat with you and take several pictures with so many people. It was just great. Makes me feel good that you guys are listening. So thank you very much, and for reaching out, and for those people who have also re-upped their donations by handing me some cash and saying, hey, I want to continue to support the Magic Word podcast. So thank all of you for your friendship and becoming friends of the Magic Word. And I posted and mentioned a few of their names also on the pod letter. This week at the end of Magic Live, there was some devastating news that we all learned about the horrible fire, the tragedy that happened in Lanai, Maui, Hawaii, and it caused mass devastation across the island. And the last I heard, there were like about 100 people who had died in that fire, and many had lost their livelihoods, their homes. So much tragedy that's happened there. As some of you know, that Warren Annabelle's is one of the places that was on the island. I say was because that is completely destroyed then as well. If you go to the magicwordpodcast.com, there you will see not only a few pictures that are taken of what's left of Warren Annabelle's, but also there is a link to a GoFundMe account that Warren Gibson, who is the owner of Warren Annabelle's, has posted. So if you can provide some financial assistance to help the families and the staff of those who used to work there, who have lost everything and their livelihoods, it would be greatly appreciated. And while I was there at Magic Live, I had a chance to chat briefly with Carrie Pollack, who was the creator of many of the magic effects there at Warren and Annabelle's, and had worked in the early years along with Warren Gibson. And I was asking him whether he thought they might rebuild that. And I know that's a question that might be on many of your mind. And I understand that Warren has retired from performing there on a regular basis and has kind of turned it over to some others who are performing, one of whom is Dana Daniels, who is our guest here this week, and John Chirac. But he has, as I understand it, was probably not going to rebuild it, since he had already more or less not walked away from it, but he still managed it, I understand. Don't know all the details, and Kerry didn't know either. He just was hypothesizing that probably not going to be rebuilt, but there's an opportunity there for somebody perhaps to do that. But I don't know that even if it does get rebuilt, whether that Kerry would be involved with helping to put that back to the way that it once was in its glory day. Well, I wanted to talk with Dana Daniels this week because just quite literally the day before this fire happened, we were sitting in my room when we recorded this conversation, and I was planning on posting this episode sometime in the future. However, I thought that it might be more timely to release this now. Most of what we talk about here this week has to do with the Long Beach Mystics, of which he was a member when he was growing up as a youth, and then working at Disneyland, and what it was like working for Disney, and just a lot of really great stories and some funny things that have happened. And then towards the end, the last few minutes, he does talk about working at Warren and Annabelle's and what a great place that it is or was. You can hear the excitement in his voice and the love and compassion that he had for the place, and looking forward to continuing working there for many years. And to think that almost in the blink of an eye, within the next 24 hours, that all that would be taken away and not to happen again. And he and others are looking then for other opportunities. And I know he does have quite a few things that are happening, and so not to worry necessarily about Dana and John Chirac and some others. They're going to continue to do something else in the future, but it just won't be there at Warren and Annabelle's any longer. But if you can help with your financial donation, please go to the website at themagicwordpodcast.com, and there you will see a link where that you can go to their GoFundMe page to help the families of those who have lost so much. Well, as I said, this is a rather timely episode, and I think you will enjoy the conversation that I have this week with my guest. Please welcome Mr. Dana Daniels here on The Magic Word. Today I'm with a guest that I'm excited to talk with because I've been wanting to chat with him for quite some time, but our paths really haven't crossed where we have had enough time really to sit and talk. But we've known each other for a long time, and he is typically over in Hawaii working, and I say that's not the mainland, so he's over there working at Warren Annabelle's. He's also someone who is a member of the Long Beach Mystics, and he also then has worked in Disneyland for a long time, he say like 16 years, and just does a lot of great things. He's been, you perhaps know him working with Luigi, his bird. It's a bird. And he's one of the funniest guys I know. Please welcome my friend, Dana Daniels. Hey there, Daniel.
Hi, Scott. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. I'm so glad that you can make it. I'm glad we had a chance really to sit down and actually have this chat.
I've been looking forward to this.
Yeah. So there's so many different things I want to talk about. I've talked with several other members of the Long Beach Mystics. So I've talked on the podcast, I've had Kevin James, David Diebel, and Les Arnold, Stan Allen, Mike Caveney. Trying to think of some others perhaps I may have had that, I've had a lot of people.
Yeah, we have a nice roster.
Really do.
Yeah.
And
great magicians, good friends.
And you lived in California when you were a child, I guess, and how you kind of...
Well, I still live in California.
Yeah, but I mean, whenever you got into the mystics.
But I grew up in Long Beach. I was born and raised in Long Beach, so I'm a real Long Beach mystic.
A Long Beacher. What do they call people? Are they Beachers, or what are they, Long...
Son of a Beachers?
There we go, okay.
I don't know.
Sons of. Okay, unless you're a daughter. So when you got into the Long Beach Mystics, they were kind of already starting, because I guess from what I've talked with other guys, you couldn't get into, they didn't have a juniors with the castle at the time, so.
There was no junior castle at that time. I joined when I was 11 years old.
Okay.
I started taking magic classes at the Stan Allen's Magic Shop. It wasn't called that. It was called the Magic Shop. Mm-hmm. Or actually, B&H School of Magic, it was called the Magic Shop. But Stan owned it, Stan Allen.
Okay.
And then he had magic class.
Stan was older than you?
Yeah, Stan's about 10 or 11 years older than me. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, yeah, he was around 21, I think, when he was teaching, or he ran the shop. Mm-hmm. I got interested in magic. I was in the hospital. I had 2 broken legs from a car accident.
Holy cow.
Yeah, and a magician came up and did a show.
Mm-hmm. In the hospital? In
the hospital. That was the first time I ever saw a magician live in person.
But you had seen him on TV, I guess? Or?
I used to watch Chuck Jones.
All right.
When I was really little on KCOP in Los Angeles, Channel 13.
Did he have a regular show?
Yeah, he had a Chuck Jones, the Magic Man, or whatever. He would show cartoons, Felix the Cat cartoons. And then in between, he'd do some magic tricks. He was kind of dressed like a court jester, from what I remember. And, and then they would just show another cartoon. He'd do some magic. They go to
Was
commercial.
Jan working with him, I guess, at the time?
I don't remember Jan being in the show. It was just him, and it was black and white on our little black and white television set.
So you didn't at that time have Mark Wilson in his Magic Land of Alakazam. I know that was nationwide, but
that was before me.
Okay, then. Oh, it was. Okay.
Yeah.
I keep forgetting you're such a young feller here.
Oh, well, yeah.
So you had Chuck, and so you're watching them. That was the only magician that you had seen. And so when you saw the guy in your hospital.
Yes, that was years later. Well, after Chuck Jones, I was a little bit interested. I got a magic kit, but when I found out it required practice and it wasn't real magic, lost interest.
Really? And about how old were you? About 8,
Oh, that was,
9,
no,
10?
no, that was probably 5 or 6 years, or 7 years. I don't remember. Around there. Yeah, and then when I was 11, I was in the hospital. Yeah, seeing the magician live in person. It was actually the last thing he did was, he did a peering cane. He made a cane appear when he walked off stage, and he twirled it.
Elegant.
So I do a bit about that in my show out at Maui. In the middle of the show, I talk about that, how the magician made the cane appear and he walked off, and I said, that's when the magic bug bit. And then I do another trick that I show that I learned early. And anyways, when I finish my show and I say, thank you, good night, I reach up and I make the cane appear, and I twirled it when I walk off the stage.
Oh, callback.
As a little callback, and it gets a great reaction.
That's amazing how that you could be influenced by somebody like that at an early age. I have heard before psychological studies being done on children as to when they really start to develop and stay focused. When you're younger, like you said, 5 and for 6, the kids are always running one place or another. They're in this activity or that activity, but around the age of 11, that's what I've heard is kind of the sweet spot, I guess, when they start getting focused. And if they start learning magic at about that time, they're probably going to stick with it. Or if they learn soccer, they're going to stick with soccer or whatever that sport or whatever it is that interests them. Prior to that, they're playing soccer and baseball and football and just running around the block and whatever, chasing butterflies. But along about 10 or 11, 12 seems like, and I say that because that was, for a while, we had, I say with the IBM, the International Brotherhood of Magicians, required youth to be at a certain age. It was like, I think 16 or 18 or something. Then after they read the studies, they realized that if you get them started earlier at around 11, that's then they will stay interested longer and they could perhaps retain members longer. From what I've heard.
They, well, I was really lucky because I started taking those classes at the magic shop. When I went,
The Stan was teaching?
Yeah, Stan was teaching, and then there was another guy, Brad Burt, who had his own magic shop eventually. But Brad used to work there at that time behind the counter, and he taught classes. When my mom took me to, after I got out of the hospital, my mom took me to the magic shop, and I found out they had magic classes. So we signed up for that. And then while I was taking the classes, I saw this thing about the Long Beach Mystics. It was like, for their meetings. They have meetings once a month over at Emerson Elementary School in the auditorium at night. And so I went to that. And my first meeting I went to, they were talking about a field trip to the Magic Castle. And I was like, what's the Magic Castle? And so they're explaining what it was and all this. And I was like, I want to go. So I raised my hand. I'm not a member yet, but can I go? They said, sure. And so I went, and I remember that was the first time I ever been to Magic Castle. I was 11 years old.
Wow.
It was early 1972.
Was that like a Sunday brunch, I guess they were doing at the time?
Sunday brunch.
Okay.
Yeah. I remember all the magicians I saw that day. I saw Bruce Servan was the first magician I saw.
Interesting.
In there. I remember I got his autograph.
Yeah.
And then then downstairs, they didn't have a Palace of Mystery. They had, the main room was actually down where the English pub is. It was very small. In my head back then, my memory.
You mean the Hat and Hare pub?
Yeah.
Down there? Okay.
Yeah. That was all the main showroom back then.
Yeah.
In my memory, it was huge. But
as an
I go down there
11-year-old
now and I'm going, wow, where was it? But it was a guy named Ringo and Nate the Great.
Okay.
I don't know whatever happened to them.
But you remember them all. That's amazing.
Yeah, but I just remember their names. It was imprinted in my head, And but I was real lucky about the Mystics in Long Beach, of all the cities that group would be in.
Right.
And I had access to it. And it was just one of those things. It's just, if a lot of kids that get interested in magic or something like that, and they might fall away from it because they don't have the support group.
Right.
Or it's like every month there was this meeting, so I get to go to, and I had developed new friends, and we were competitive. We had, shows every month, so I wanted to be on the show every month. And it was just...
Well, you put your finger, I think, on a good word there of supporting, because it seems like from what that I've talked with the other guys, everyone was supportive of each other, trying to help their acts along, whatever they were doing. And everyone would try to bring something, I guess, that was a little bit different or unique. And then the rest of you, I guess, would kind of say, okay, well, what if you did this or that, and built on that.
Well, you got inspired by, people. And then a lot of the older members, the members...
Like Les.
It was like from 7 to 21.
Yeah.
But even when they aged out, they still came around and all that. So, and they would perform once in a while, and they were, you just look up to them. It's like.
But were you invited? I mean, when you were taking lessons from Stan there at the magic shop, is that how you found out about the Mystics then, basically?
I think I saw a flyer or something for it, or I think they had a show.
And your parents would drop you off or come over to them?
Yeah.
And so was that a monthly meeting, like a regular magic club?
It was the last Friday of the month, and it was back then at Emerson Elementary School, which was just a few miles from my house.
But that was really kind of a point in time, because it seems like there wasn't a group behind you and a group behind that. It was kind of like everybody moved together, and after you were done, you were done. I mean, I don't recall that there were others that I've heard. I mean, it didn't last like 20 years or something. I mean,
well, it started in 1955.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Well, I stand corrected.
Yeah, and I joined in 72.
Okay.
So, and it's, from what I understand, through the years, it's had its ups and downs where membership's low, or because, people move on, and then someone will come along and revive it. And that was me at one point.
Yeah.
When I was 18, I was managing the magic shop, and I was still in my senior year at high school, and the Mystics were kind of like almost non-existent around that time.
Okay.
And then, so I called a bunch of guys, and we said, let's get this thing going again.
What do you think was that magic secret sauce that made that graduation class, if you will, so successful? When you say it's been around for 20 years, and then all of a sudden, I mean, the ones who were remembered are a handful of guys and gals who were in that. I mean, what was it that was the dynamic that made that group work and be so successful? I mean, I'm trying to get to the point for other clubs who might think, we've been trying to get our club going, and, what do these guys have that we need to try to encourage young people to
Well, I think
successful?
we're lucky with talent from some, individuals, and I think other people would see the shows and they just want to be. It attracted other talent. It's like Kevin James.
I see, right?
Moved from Michigan to Long Beach.
Yeah, because he had
just
heard
to
about
join
that.
the Mystics.
Yes, what he told me.
Because he saw them perform in, I believe, at Abbott's.
Yeah. Was Mark Kalin? I know Mark was part of that group, but
Mark and I joined around the same time.
Okay.
Yeah, we were. I mean, I have I have a lot of the stuff from the history of the Mystics. I keep, as some of that stuff got kind of split up. I think Victor Sivas has a lot of stuff, and I have some stuff and some old books and all that. Our old rosters and all that, so you can see who's a member back in those days. I have all the programs from our It's Amazing show, which was our annual show we did every year.
Yeah.
And those are fun to look back on, especially before my time at the Mystics, but it was 1968 or 69 after there was an It's Amazing. It was at Millikan High School, which is where I went to high school. In fact, a lot of Mystics went there. But Steve Martin was on the show.
Okay.
Before he was...
Was he a comedy club performer?
He was a magician and a comedian. I think during that time he was a writer for Sonny and Cher, but he was trying to develop his own. He wanted to become his own show, his own.
Yeah. He was not a mystic, though, was he?
He was, from what I understand. Les Arnold told me he did come to some meetings.
Okay.
But he never joined.
Okay.
But they had him on as a guest act. We always had guest acts on our annual show, and from what I heard, he was hilarious.
I would imagine so. Yeah, I would think that you got to grow, but I'm sure he was at that point probably still pretty good as he was at the beginning over there. And he worked, I believe, also. We talked about Disneyland. Didn't he work at a magic shop down in Disneyland also?
I didn't work in the magic shop.
Okay.
I started out...
On the street?
Well, I'll give you the full story. Actually, I have 19 years experience at Disneyland.
Wow.
16 as a magician.
Okay.
I was in high school, and a bunch of friends and that were going to go to Disneyland to audition to be characters, like Goofy, Mickey Mouse, blah, blah, blah. And they said, you want to go? And I was like, I said, I don't want to work at Disneyland. I don't want to cut my hair.
Oh.
Because my hair was long.
Yeah, yeah.
So you have to cut your hair above your ears.
Right.
And but they
even
said, we're just going to go for fun.
Even to be in a costume, you had to have short hair?
Yep.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
I know. You couldn't figure that out.
No.
The public never sees you. So I went to the audition for fun, but I got the job.
As a character?
They offered me a job, yeah. And part-time job.
Yeah.
So I thought, this might be kind of fun. So
It was a summer job.
Yeah, summer or whatever. It was a casual position, you know. So you come in on weekends and stuff like that. So I took it. I thought it'd be fun. So I took the job, and my first gig, I think I was working at grad night as Tigger, taking pictures of, people.
High school students, yeah.
Then I did some parades, and then I was doing Goofy and Captain Hook, all the tall characters.
Okay.
Yeah. So I did that, and then I went over. I go into the park all the time because now I get in for free. And then I saw Wally Bogue perform in the Golden Horseshoe. And because they didn't have magicians at the park, only in the magic shop.
Now, Wally Bogue was the original guy that kind of did the thing I know Bev Bergeron did with the teeth in the corn.
Wally Bogue was opening day at Disneyland. Walt Disney hired him for the Golden Horseshoe Review. He was the comedian.
Yeah.
He really put that show together, actually, Wally did. And so, he did it for 27 years.
Wow.
So I saw him perform. It was the first time I ever saw the show. I was 18. And I was like, I want to be that guy. I want to do that job.
Sure.
And I actually found out where his dressing room was on one of my breaks. And I was goofy that day. So I'm wearing, I'm a sweaty T-shirt. I got shorts on. And I'm wearing giant goofy shoes, which look like clown shoes almost. They're real big shoes. I knock on his dressing room door and I introduce myself. I say, hey, I'm a magician. I loved your show. If you ever need another understudy, think of me, or whatever like that.
Right.
And he kind of chuckled.
Who are you, kid?
I was a kid.
Yeah.
And he says, hey, well, go to they have auditions once a year at Disneyland for just general entertainment. You should go to that. And, you never know.
Right.
So, he could have hired me right there if he wanted to, because Wally had that kind of power, but he's not going to hire this skinny kid, So I would go to those auditions, but they always did well, but they didn't have magicians at the park as performers. And then I always would mention the horseshoe, and they go, well, you're too young, for that part, and
You need to be like in your 30s or something, or what were they thinking of being too young?
Wally was at that time probably in his 50s or 60s, I think.
So that's kind of the image they had of an older guy.
Right.
Yeah.
And the other two parts in the show were older people too.
Okay.
Fulton Burley, Betty Taylor. And anyways, plus I wasn't ready for that show at that time. Anyways, so the next year I go back again. Anyway, and then Wally Bogue in 1982 retires. And then they hired one of his understudies, Dick Hardwick, who is extremely funny, and that's who they should have hired. He was perfect. He did the show. He took over for Wally Bogue, and now Dick is about 10, 11 years older than me.
And did he do a lot of the same gags and jokes and tricks?
We always did some of in the very beginning, because you enter as a traveling salesman, interrupt the show, you shoot the gun off, and there's all of these jokes that Wally did, and you do those to a certain point, and then you do your own act.
Ah, okay.
Yeah. And so, and then you come back as Pecos Bill later in the show, and you do the bit where you spit the teeth out.
Right.
You get hit in there. So, so they hired him, and then around that same time, Disneyland was reopening Fantasyland. They totally redid Fantasyland, and this is 1983 now. And they thought, for the opening, maybe we should get some jugglers and some magicians. So then they called. Then they said, we're going to have auditions. So I went and auditioned, and I was the only magician they hired. The rest were jugglers, and that's really where I picked up juggling from. It was from hanging out with these guys all day.
Do you remember what your set was, as far as how you impressed them? Do you cup some balls or
for the audition?
For the audition?
Oh, I remember I shot a gun up in the air. I brought a blank gun with me, and they're wondering, how did I get that on property? But I went bang like that, and I go, well, now I have your attention.
Yeah.
Da-da-da. And quite frankly, I don't remember what I did.
Okay. I was just wondering, as far
probably
as...
a 20th Century Silks or something, anything I could do, because you're doing shows for families and kids, so I probably would have got kids up there and, cutting a stir rope. I don't really recall.
Yeah.
But yeah, got me the job, and so then I work in the park in Fantasyland, and we were called the Royal Court Jesters, but we weren't dressed like court jesters. We were dressed us up as Renaissance street performers. And then I thought, you know what, I'm going to give that horseshoe thing one more step. I wanted to be in the horseshoe. So I tracked down who the show director was. And I said, I'm in the park 5 days a week. And I said,
as a street performer.
as a street performer doing comedy and magic.
Right.
And I said, if Dick Hardwick, I said, if he gets sick in the middle of the day, or, I mean, if you need someone in a pinch, might be a good idea to think of me for that part. And he thought, that's a great idea. That way they don't have to close the show.
Right.
Because basically the comedian's the star of the show.
Yeah.
And so they auditioned me, and I said, well, and it was going to be in the Horseshoe, and it was just going to be for that guy, the director.
Right.
And so I thought, God, I don't want to perform for one person. So I went to wardrobe. I knew people in wardrobe.
Yeah.
I said, can you dress me up like the traveling salesman in the Horseshoe? They did. And then I went over to the character department around the time that people were getting off work, and in the break area. And I knew all these people. And I said, you want to come to the Horseshoe and watch me do this? So I went marching in there after the shows were done for the day, and I had like 30 people behind me.
And an entourage.
Yeah. And I told them all, yuck it up. And I had one of them, I said, pretend like you're a little kid. So I'm going to bring a kid up on stage, because that's standard to bring a kid up on stage in that show. And so that's what I did. And I got the job as his understudy.
Wow, that's smart thinking.
Yeah. Yeah, I worked.
How old were you at the
worked.
time? About 20-something at that
I
time?
was 22
Okay.
at that point.
Had you gone to college and studied theater?
I
or done
did a
anything?
little bit of college, but I didn't graduate.
And theater, or what were you going to
Yeah, I took theater, and I took salesmanship classes or something, different
Marketing,
things like that.
yeah.
Marketing, stuff like that. Yeah. Because I thought maybe if a magic thing didn't work out, I wanted to be actually a photographer.
Oh, okay.
And I was kind of either going either way, but I started just really making a living doing magic. So I thought, okay, this is where we're going to go.
And so you started working then at the Horseshoe on a regular basis.
Yeah, well, still doing the stuff in Disneyland as a street performer, and then whenever they needed me. And then I would go into the Horseshoe, and then sometimes they schedule me regularly just on his days off. Then we had nighttime shows for one summer, and I did that 5 nights a week, I should say, to go doing the Horseshoe at night. They just did that. They just tried it. It was something they usually didn't do.
And did that seem to work out?
Well, yeah, for that summer, it worked out well. But then the show closed in '86. They took it out. Everybody couldn't believe it.
Well, they did. When did Disney World open?
Disney World opened in '71.
Okay, so they had a Horseshoe down there.
Right. And when it opened, Wally Bogue went there to open that show. And so he stayed there for, I think, 2 or 3 years. And a guy named Bert Henry,
Okay.
who was one of his understudies at Disneyland, took over the show in Disneyland. And then Bev was mixed in there.
Right.
I'm not sure how that was. I think he might have been at Disneyland too, or
I'm guessing he was, because he lived in L.A. for a long time.
and then he went down to
Orlando.
So and then Wally was there for a couple of years. Then he wanted to come back, and so
So that's when Bev took
so
over?
he came back, and Bert went to Disney World,
Oh.
and it was covered. The show was covered by Bert and Bev.
Okay.
I'm not sure how it was split up, but I remember going there early '80s, and I saw both of them do the show. I went one day, saw Bev, and the next day I saw Bert.
That would have been about the time I took my family down there also. It would have been approximately 84, I think,
Yeah.
whenever I remember seeing Bev. And
Yeah.
we were friends, and he gave us a seat right there on the stage, one of those.
The booth, yeah.
The booth, yeah.
Yeah.
And he used my kids, because I had one son at the time who was 3 and the other one was 6.
Yeah, one of our booths at Disneyland was called Walt's booth, because that's where Walt Disney would sit every time he came in to see the show.
Oh, okay.
Before my time.
So when they closed the Golden Horseshoe at Disneyland, they kept the one open at Disney World?
No,
or
they closed
both?
exactly the same day.
Huh, both of them.
Yeah, they had people come in, and they usually, I think it was director of entertainment at both parks, and they made the announcement at the same time, so no one could call anybody and say, "Guess what's happening?"
Yeah.
Or did this happen to
and
you?
warn them, right? And there's a 4-hour difference, obviously.
So I'm not sure how that
they coordinated
worked
that.
out.
Yeah. But that's interesting. Why do you think that they ended up closing the Golden Horseshoe? Or what was their
I've heard
justification?
many different theories on that, but there was a guy high up in the company that never liked it,
Okay.
and he wanted to see some other shows in there. So
Okay.
that's what I've heard. I don't know how he could possibly not like it or possibly think a show that's been running in there for 27 years.
It's been successful.
No, more than that, 27. But when it got canceled, 86, so that's...
So he's wanted to shake things up, it sounds like, and kind of exert his authority or whatever. Sometimes that's a situation when people get a certain position over there. And so were there other things that kind of changed along that time? I mean, I know from time to time, for an example, that obviously the Haunted House had closed, Mr. Toad's Wild Ride. And,
no, it's still there.
Is Mr. Toad's Wild Ride still there?
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
Haunted Mansion's still there.
Okay, I haven't been there in a while.
Who's sending you the newsletter? It's like, but but I still had a job. I mean, I was just sad to see the show. I was still doing Strolling Magic. I was doing Strolling Magic as a riverboat gambler in Frontierland. I kept on creating stuff to keep me around. It was, but the jugglers, stayed there for a long time. And, but I was like saying, hey, you should put me out there as a riverboat gambler doing Strolling Magic and work on the Mark Twain. They thought that was a great idea. And then I had some other shows we did. Randy Pryor and I did a show out in New Orleans as a couple of pirates.
Yeah.
And that show was fun. It was juggling and magic in it.
And now it's the Pirates of the Caribbean. That's still going on, but they've changed some of the ride. Is that right?
Through the years, they always make little changes.
Okay.
Political correctness got onto it. Rather than auctioning off women, they're auctioning off chickens.
Okay.
And instead of chasing the women,
right, I remember that.
To rape them, the women they put food in their arms, so the pirates chasing them to get the food.
Got it.
Yeah. And when I was a little kid, I never picked up on anything like that was bad.
I don't think little kids do. It's the parents that
I don't think anybody thought of it. Because it was cartoonish. But,
exactly.
Whatever. But they changed it. It's still a great ride. And then they put Johnny Depp in there when the pirate movie came out.
Right. That's why I thought that they were probably keeping with that. Okay, but they've added like Harry Potter, and they've added some other things.
Harry Potter's Universal.
Okay, I'm getting those conflated here. Okay.
Let me educate you.
Please do, because you're a Disney guy.
Yeah. I worked for Universal too.
Did you?
Yeah,
okay.
Mostly as a consultant.
Okay.
Yeah.
Did you ever work with Disney as an Imagineer?
No.
Okay.
No.
As I understand that there are a few people, I think maybe Jim Steinmeier might be, or some people who kind of have
Tony
ideas.
Baxter. Oh, you're talking the Magic World.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The Magic World.
Yeah, Jim, I think, has worked on a lot of stuff over
I believe
there.
Vito Lupo has done some consulting.
I've done some consulting.
Yeah.
But I'm not an Imagineer. But those Imagineers are more the ones that create the rides.
Oh, they are?
Stuff
Okay.
like that. And then they'll hire consultants. And I have consulted on shows.
Okay.
Like Merlin, Sword in the Stone show.
I remember that show.
Put magic into that show. And then they would bring me back, and because after a couple of years, it kind of disappears because they hire new guys and they don't train them, and the magic kind of goes away.
Right. So
I just come back and teach the same thing over again, and they put it back in.
So going back to Steve Martin then again, but he did work at a magic shop there
he worked in the Merlin Magic Shop in Fantasyland.
Okay.
And plus, he also was a huge Wally Bogue fan.
Okay.
And I got to meet Steve at Milt Larson's club down in Santa Barbara.
Magic Castle in Santa Barbara.
Yeah,
right.
I worked that, and I remember I showed up, and opening night for me, and Milt said, "Oh, yeah, Steve Martin's coming in tonight."
Yeah.
I'm like going, "Really?" I mean, Steve Martin's like a hero to me, and. So
you've seen him do his Flydini, I guess. At the castle.
It's just so funny. I didn't see it at the castle. I saw it on Johnny Carson's
Okay,
show.
sure.
But I heard he tested it out at the castle.
That's what I heard.
Yeah. So Steve was there in the front row, and with his wife, and so after the show, he stayed and he chatted with me, and he wrote me a joke.
Wow.
He said, "I got a good line for you."
What is it?
And well, it's for my magazine trick. It's only funny if you're in context, but but the line is, what's even more shocking, it's in Bon Appetit magazine. That's the line.
Okay.
So you hear me say that.
That's where it came from.
That's Steve Martin.
Okay.
Yeah. Or whatever magazine I'm holding.
Right.
But I told him, I said, I told him about my experience in the Golden Horseshoe because he was a huge Wally
Wally
Bogue
Bogue,
fan,
right.
and he always wanted to do that show. So I said, "Yeah, I got to do the Pecos Bill part," and he just lit up, and he goes, "Really? Hey!" And he starts like, "Did you do this line? Did you do that line? Did you?" I go, "Yeah, I did that one. Didn't do that one."
Yeah.
And then we talked about Wally, and he was like, he turned into a little kid.
Wow.
And it was a nice little connection.
Kind of brought him back to when he was a child.
Yeah,
and
he
back
says,
in
I
the
always
park.
wanted to do that show. And I said, well, I think things turned out well for you. It's like, I did it.
Yeah.
Look at me.
Just think how those roles could have been reversed.
I'll take it.
Wow, that is funny. Yeah. So you stuck with them for a long time. Now, during that time, I mean, one of your acts, which I really love, is it the Nothing Act? That what is that called? With the guy in the piano?
The Nothing Act.
Yeah.
I like that better. I got nothing. Just come out to the audience. How you doing? Yeah, I got nothing. Yeah, there we go. Have a drink. You want to see a trick? No.
Here's some
I
cards.
got nothing. So,
no charge. There you go.
It's called the No Show.
No Show. There we go.
Yes.
So close. I had NO right.
Yeah. And that has a tie for Disneyland also. When the Golden Horseshoe closed down, I was still doing magic, like I said, in Fantasyland, Frontierland.
Yeah.
And then finally, like in 1990, they got rid of our program. So,
yeah.
And I was about done doing it anyways. So, because I used to do the scheduling for all the acts. Mm-hmm. And I was scheduling myself less and less and less. And they started to notice, And I just said, I'm done. I said, and they kind of got rid of the whole program. And then, I don't know, 4 years later, they called me and they hired me as a consultant to come up with some ideas for entertainment in the park because they liked the stuff I came up with when I was working there. And so I came up with all these great ideas, I thought. They didn't bite any of them, though. I mean, they were kind of, I had this one idea for a tour guide that had a big beehive hairdo and a megaphone, and she would take you on little tours, whatever land she's in.
Yeah.
And so I gave them, the script I wrote was a tour through Tomorrowland, and she would say, welcome to Tomorrowland. This is where you get in line today, ride it tomorrow. And then over here is Space Mountain, and over here was an empty building, and this is space available. And stuff like that.
Yeah.
Here's Star Tours. You go on there, you see Buddy Ebsen's house. Buddy Ebsen was obscure. But
cement pond.
But at the end of the meeting, the pitch meeting, they said, oh, you know what? We forgot to mention to you. In the Golden Horseshoe at that point in time, this was 1995, they said they had a group in there called Billy Hill and the Hillbillies. They didn't have like a can-can show anymore. So Billy Hill and the Hillbillies were in there performing, but 5 days a week, but the Horseshoe was closed Tuesdays and Wednesdays. Do you have any idea for a show we could put in there? And I said, yeah, me. Mm-hmm. I said, that would work great because my wife's pregnant with our first child. I want to stay home more.
Right.
I could do that and then just do local gigs. And
how many times a day would you do that show?
Five times a day.
Tuesday and Wednesday.
Yeah. And Tuesdays and Wednesdays, 5 shows a day. And so they said, well, that wouldn't work. It's one act. We can't just put one person in there. And I said, and then I don't know, this idea just flew into my head. And I said, okay, well, how about this? A big variety show and none of the acts show up. Uh-huh. And the guy who mops the floors, who's seen the show a million times, has got to do all the acts.
Yeah.
And they were like, that's great. And I said, you do realize it's still just me doing my act, which you hated a moment ago. And they said, yeah, but now it's a story.
Ah, yeah.
And Disneyland loves stories.
Yeah.
And so that's how that started. They said, when can you start? I mean, literally, this meeting was in April, and I opened the show in May.
Wow.
You know, it was
pretty
like
quick
I
turnaround.
actually left the meeting and went directly over to the Horseshoe, and I looked at their backdrops to see what I could do. Then I had to figure out how to split my act up, you know, with the juggler and this and that. So, yeah, I opened up a month later, and I did it for 8 years.
And the gentleman who plays the piano for you, was he always with you?
Yeah, Richard Allen, who's knows Irma very well at the Magic Castle, and he's a brilliant piano player, and he's very improvisational. He knows any song you can name, he could play it.
Okay.
And so that's when I first got introduced with him. They brought him in, and we clicked. And Richard's very funny. Yeah. And so I go, oh, great. Someone I could, not only a piano player, but now I can go back and forth with,
can riff with him,
you know. Yeah. And so that was great. And then he only stayed there for about 3 years, and then I had to get another guy. So I found another guy, Hal Ratliff, and Hal was great too. And then Richard would come in every once in a while and fill in. So,
are you still doing that show from?
Well,
time
see
to
that,
time?
yeah. So at Disneyland, we called it it was called the Dana Daniels Variety Show, and then it got changed after a while. Disneyland was uncomfortable with my name being on it. I think because of negotiations.
Okay, sure. Yeah, yep.
So it was changed to the Variety Show, and I just came in one day. My name wasn't on the sign anymore.
They didn't even tell you about it. They just took it off.
No, it was gone. Yeah,
Wow.
I still have the sign that my name was on. It's in my house.
Am I still on the show today?
Yeah, I was doing the show. So there was that, and so we did, when we finished that show up, it was actually Stan Allen. Stan said, "You know what? That was a great show. You should do that in theaters."
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I thought, okay, that'd be a lot of work. I had tons of Disney gags in there. It was sort of geared towards Disney.
So you had to take some things out and change things.
I had a lot of Disney gags.
Yeah. And you had your timing down and everything for those gags.
Right.
Obviously.
Yeah.
Sure.
And so what happened? Oh, I was one day I was working. Oh, I got a call from Ron Wilson, who was working the Magic Castle, and Ed Alonzo was working. He always used to do the first 2 weeks of December. He would work, and he'd do the whole show, all 3 spots.
At the castle, all 3?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think there was one week where Ed had something else going on. He couldn't be there for Monday and Tuesday. So, and it was like a last minute thing. And so Ron calls me up and says, "Can you come down, cover for Ed, and do all 3 spots?" And I was like, "Really? Wow, you could have a comedy magician come in and do all 3 spots?" I mean, I could do it.
Yeah.
But I was like, that's unusual. I felt honored.
Yeah, special.
So I came down and I did it, and it killed. And Ron was like, "I'm going to give you a whole week. When do you want to do it?" And so we came up with a week. And then it was like far into the summer when it was booked. And then I don't know if I can get the timing down this right. But anyways, Ron wasn't booking the castle anymore at this point.
Yeah.
And Dale Salwack was. And so Dale, I was getting closer to the show, and I thought, you know what? If I do this show that I did at Disneyland, if I want to change it, I need a timeline. I need something to give me motivation to change it.
Sure.
So I called up Dale and I said, "Hey, I'm supposed to be at the castle doing all 3 spots. I was thinking about doing that show I used to do at Disneyland." And fortunately, Dale's seen it. He goes, "That'd be great. I love that show." So we booked it. And then now I had a deadline that I had to get this changed.
Right.
And so the first thing was change the name of it. And then I just came up with the name No Show, the No Show. Yeah.
Because they didn't show up.
No, they act show up. Yeah.
Right.
And and then I changed one of the characters, rewrote the jokes, and called up Richard. And this is so true. People don't believe this. We went in there with no rehearsal. We hadn't done the show in, I think, 2 or 3 years.
Yeah.
I just sent him the script, and I said, "Play these songs."
Wow.
And we literally set it up, kind of talked through it, but we never did it until we walked on stage. And it was like it went perfect.
It was magic.
I was so nervous. I was sweating through my shirt because I wasn't sure if this was going to work or not. And it went great. Yeah.
And then you did it then every night.
Yeah, we just did it every night. We something we go, oh, this works, that didn't work.
Right.
But the thing is, when something doesn't work, if I mess up, Richard will actually call it out on stage in front of the audience. And then I have to go back. Or if he messes up, and that's part of the fun of the show.
I was going to say, have you worked in those gags so they actually happen from time to time?
Some stuff that, yes. Oh, yeah, we do that a lot. If something goes wrong, I said, we're doing that every show.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's
We're keeping that in.
Yeah. Well, there's like the bit where I come running out and I say, boy, it's hard to be on the spot to remember what the lines are. But I go, stop the show. And I would say, but I would say the wrong thing. Yeah. And then I go, like that. And I would walk back and come back on and say it correctly.
Yeah.
And it got such a huge laugh. So I go, let's do that every show.
Yeah, keep that in.
Yeah,
exactly.
So.
Now, Luigi was with you during the show, or those shows too, right?
Right, yeah.
So Luigi the bird.
I started doing Luigi in 1983.
Okay, and tell us me again what type of bird that is.
He's a spectacle Amazon parrot, and I bought him as a pet, and with no intention of doing magic with him.
So it had nothing to do with when you were a Long Beach Mystic. It was far.
No, I was a Long Beach.
Well, still in '83.
No, I was still Mystic.
Okay,
yeah.
okay.
I bought him. I was like 21.
Okay.
21 years old. Yeah.
And so the other guys said, "Hey, this is cool. That's great."
Well, I like I said, he was a pet. Of course, when you're a magician, you got a parrot at home. You want to say, "Hey, well, I wonder if he'll pick a card." And then not only would he pick it, but he would chew it up. And so I came up with this gag. Whenever someone came over to the house, I said, "Watch, I can read his mind." It wasn't he could read his mind. The bit was I could read the bird's mind. So I said, "I go pick a card," and I go, "Now I'm going to show it to the bird." And while I'm showing to the bird chews up half the card. Yeah. And then I go, and I'm going to put it back in the deck, acting like I'm clueless.
Right.
But the way I'm acting is like I'm clueless, but I am in on it, but they don't get it, And I shuffle it up there, and I think of your card, and I would bring up the first one, which is a perfectly normal card. And I go, nope, nothing. And I bring up the next card, put my forehead.
Yeah.
Nope, not getting anything. Then the third card is the one that's half chewed. And I go, wait a minute.
Something's coming.
Do you feel it too? And it would crack up. And then I had to go host one of the Mystic meetings. It was my turn to host that month. And my mom said, you should do that thing where the bird chews the card. That's hilarious. And I said, funny in the living room, Mom, but on stage?
Yeah.
I don't think so. But I got desperate, so I did it. And after I did, and it played so well, and after I did it, Mike Caveney came up to me and said, that's the funniest thing you've ever done. And he just said, actually, his first words were, more bird.
More bird.
Yeah. He goes, you've been looking for a hook. You just found it. So that's all I had to hear because, Mike and Stan and all them, I looked up to them.
Getting their affirmation of saying, go with that.
Oh, yeah, that's all I needed for my motivation.
Yeah.
So it was like, now I had to find tricks that would work and not work in that act,
And so do you keep using Luigi as your bird going throughout the show? I mean,
well, now I step away and do other stuff.
Yeah.
I used to do everything with him, but I remember Peter Pitt told me one time I was working the castle. He goes,
too much bird?
He just said, he goes, don't be afraid to walk away from just leave them there, do something else. Don't feel like you have to do everything with the bird. Step away, do some other stuff, then come back.
Yeah.
And I was like, So it took me a while to do that.
Because you probably used him as a crutch for a while.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and I was afraid to step away from him. I thought, okay,
he's
step away from this gold mine? No way. It's like,
now it's just me. I've got to go back.
So.
Well, now you were telling me also this is the third one because they only lived like
they
about
lived 25 years, but Luigi, the first one, lived 29. And during his lifetime, I had another one, a backup bird, but he never was in the show. And then when Luigi passed away, he passed away backstage at the Magic Castle.
Wow. What'd you do? I mean, did you have to go home and get... Well, I understand that, of course.
You bring him back up. We
Yeah.
were doing the No Show, and the last show on Saturday night, I could tell he was sick. It was like all of a sudden he's sitting on that perch and he's hunkered. And I've raised birds, doves, and that since I was 12.
Yeah.
So it's like, I'm going, uh-oh. And I know he's old.
Yeah.
And I'm going, and I was spending the night at the Caveney's house, back then, while I was in town. And so I brought him home, and I thought, get some water, maybe he'll snap out of it. And then the next morning, no, he was even worse. And so I just knew he was dying. I could just see him. There's nothing he could do.
Right.
It's not, he's 29 years old. And so I brought him to the castle because I had to work the brunches. And so I'm trying to figure out, so I know I'm not going to use them, so I'm trying to figure out a set to do. Well, fortunately, there was a guy in the parlor that he was doing an act with a dove, and our shows were opposite. So I went over to him. I said, "Can I borrow your dove? And I'll just do psychic dove."
Yeah.
And which I've never done before, but I did it and it went great.
Yeah.
I was like, that kind of surprised me. But if you look at the act, really, Luigi sits there and really doesn't do anything. So
it's a bird.
So, and that's the whole gag of the show, really.
Yeah.
So backstage, in between shows, Luigi passed away in my hands.
Wow.
Yeah, and then I was devastated. They canceled the last show, and then I had to come back and work that night. But I had my other parrot
with you
at home.
Oh, okay.
So I called my wife. I said, "Luigi just passed away. Can you bring Cosmo? He's my other parrot." And so she drove up and brought up Cosmo. Now, I've rehearsed Cosmo, but only at home, never in front of an audience or lighting or moving curtains.
Oh.
And
freaked out? Cosmo's freaked
yes. out? So the first show, Sunday night, I get Luigi's the last act in the no show.
Yeah.
It's the third act of our thing. So Richard goes into introducing us and all that, and I turn around. I put Luigi on I call the birds Luigi on stage. I put him on the perch backstage, and I'm about to come out with him. I look over there. He's gone.
Uh-oh.
Gone.
Yeah.
And I stick my head out to the curtain, and I told Richard, I go, "Hey, you know what? I bet you the audience would really love to hear your rendition of 12th Street Rag." And he knows.
Yeah.
He just went, "Okay." Da-da-da-da-da, da-da-da-da. He starts playing 12th Street Rag.
Yeah.
While he's playing, I'm looking for the bird. And I'm moving around. I can't find him. And then I thought, maybe he flew to the other side of the stage. So I walk across the stage, and I said, "Hi, Richard." Keep it going. I look over there. Can't find him. I walk back across the stage. I said, "You better play all 12 streets." I go to the other side. We find him, and he's up on the rafters up above. So we had to get a tall ladder. I crawl up there. I grab him, and I bring him back down. I put him on the perch.
Yeah.
Then I give Richard a thumbs up. He introduces me. I walk out with him on the perch. My blood was like the moment so I didn't feel it, but when I grabbed him, he bit into my thumb so hard that I was bleeding very heavily.
Okay.
And now I'm talking with the bird next to me. I'm on stage, and I'm kind of doing hand gestures, and blood is flying everywhere. Oh, and Richard's on the piano playing, going, "Dana, boo, Dana." And I go look at my thumb, and I go, "Oh, how about that? The little guy got me."
Yeah.
And so the stage manager hands me a towel. I wrap my hand in it. Towel's turning red, So, but I got through it. But it was, and afterwards, tons of magicians came up to me. "I love the new bit with the bird and the blood."
Yeah.
They thought it was a bit. And I said, "Yeah, I'm not going to keep it in. It's too messy." I didn't tell them.
That's funny.
So Cosmo lasted in the show another 6 years.
Yeah.
By that time, he was old.
Uh-huh.
And then I had another bird.
Another backup bird.
Backup bird, because when Luigi passed, and I had got another one. And so...
Was Luigi the name of your first bird? Or
that was his actual name.
Okay,
Luigi.
okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I wonder about that. And moving on to Hawaii, you've been working at Warren and Annabelle's there for how many years?
Since 2005.
Okay, gosh, okay.
And it was just always a week or two a year. fill in for Warren.
I was going to say, because you and John Chirac are the two that kind of fill in for Warren.
Well, back then it was Kerry Pollock and I.
Right.
That
well,
would
Kerry's
fill in.
one who opened up the club. I mean, he designed the whole thing, right?
Yeah, he helped Warren, put it together, actually. Yeah, did a lot of work on it.
He's got his own club out in Myrtle Beach, I
Now
believe.
he's out, yeah. Oh, not Myrtle Beach.
Is it not Myrtle?
It's the other big place.
Yes, I know. It's out there on the East Coast. Just a minute. You're
It's
right.
in South Carolina. Why am I not thinking of it? I filled in for him a few times out there.
Okay. Yeah.
But I can't remember. I'm blanking out.
Are you do you do many comedy clubs, or are comedy clubs even still a thing?
In town, yeah, I do.
Okay.
I still do the Comedy Magic Club in Hermosa.
Okay.
I used to do the Ice House quite a bit, but I haven't. Warren Annabelle keeps me so busy. It's kind of slowed down.
You said about, what, 4 months or so?
I'm there, 24 weeks a year.
Okay. So,
Yeah. So half the year.
Yeah. In a row, or are you kind of coming back and
3
forth?
weeks on, 3 weeks off on average.
Do you
Sometimes
come
we
back
mix
home
it
to the
up.
family then, I guess? Or
My wife, well, when my kids, we're empty nesters now, but when they were younger, they always came with us if it was during the summer when they're out of school. And then my wife comes with me at least 2 or 3 times a year. And
well, Maui's a great place, and as I understand it, that's like the number one on TripAdvisor and Yelp that everyone recommends. That
Warren
show.
Annabelle's? Yeah. Yeah. One of our biggest comments we get when people walk out, they say, well, I never thought going to Maui, I would go to a magic show.
Yeah.
And I never thought it would have been the most fun I had in the whole trip.
Yeah.
Yeah, we get that a lot, at least for the evening activities,
Yeah.
So,
Evening, what do they do during the day? They got afternoon things?
during the day, people go out and do, jet skiing or horseback riding.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah,
As far as activities.
I thought you meant like another show you did.
No.
Yeah.
Just for us. I mean, but as far as evening activities, you're a little more limited on the island. And we've had other shows come, competitors, but none of them lasted more than a year.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. That's interesting. I'm not surprised that you had imitators, but I didn't know that.
Oh, we
they
had
did
one
this.
across the street from us. But,
Really?
Yeah.
And that lasted a year or less?
Oh, less than that. Yeah. Yeah. It's a tough business. Yeah. And I mean, Warren almost closed within his first year. And then it just turned around.
What was it you think that made that turn?
Well, I think Warren loosened up. I wasn't there for it, but this is the story he tells.
because he was doing all of Carrie's lines. I think is what I'd heard something about.
Starting out,
he was just doing
Well,
Carrie's
he
show.
wasn't at first, but because he was very straight magic, close up.
Yes.
So his magic and everything was great, but when he started throwing in comedy
And being himself.
and
Yeah.
his southern charm, he's from South Carolina, and he started doing this whole thing about the Andy Griffith Show. And then he goes, oh, I'm really bad at remembering names. And then he goes, you seem like a goober to me. So you're a goober, and they name someone else,
Right.
Barney and this and that. And,
Right.
and if you're familiar with this show, it's hilarious. And even if you're not, it's still pretty funny.
Right. Well, that's a
And-
good way of doing it. If you can't remember someone's name, it's just, hey, Sparky, or whatever.
And everybody's, but
every
so
show.
all these people in the audience are the cast of Mayberry, because he's trying to remember their names.
Yeah.
But so, anyways, so that's really where it turned around.
Right.
And he started getting more, because more people are going, oh, you got to see this. Word of mouth is our best advertisement there, Warren Annabelle's, more than.
And I'm sure year after year you have people who go back to Maui, and they always probably come back to
They
Warren's.
do. We get people, they go, this is our 10th time here. And we even have regulars that live on the island that come in once a week.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, there are not many success stories like that are.
Oh, and for me, it was just right place, the right time, I guess.
Yeah,
I don't
serendipitous.
know. I was there on a vacation.
Were you working a cruise ship or something? And happened
No,
to
I was
stop,
on vacation in Maui, and I heard that I knew Warren, not really well, but I remember I used to work Wizards in Hollywood, and
Fred.
Warren did close-up magic, and I heard Warren opened a club, so Jane and I went to go, my wife Jane, we went to see the show. And then afterwards, he sat me down, and he right there, he said, hey, let me know if you're interested in, filling in for me. How much time can you do? Da, 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 like that.
Yeah.
And so I said, well, I could do about 40 minutes, and then at 60 if I talk slower, So, but that's really where I developed the time for my act. I mean, I started bringing more material and working on it. Because when you fill you fill in for him, you have to do 2 hours.
Wow.
He does, because it's a 2-hour show.
Is it close up in front, and then there's something in the...
Well, now the way it's formatted, we have 2 magicians, and we each do an hour. But when Warren did the show, he did the whole 2 hours.
Yeah.
And when I first started filling in for him, I had to do the whole 2 hours. But there was no way. He said, don't worry about it. Just do as long as you can. So I would go in and do probably about an hour 20. Mm-hmm. And then, but eventually you learn the room, and you learn and you don't want it to seem like you're stretching it out.
Of course not.
But I got to the point where I think my longest show was 2 hours, 10 minutes.
Wow.
And I couldn't believe it and it just flew by, and the audience was with me. It wasn't like, oh God, not looking at their watches, but it was just got to that point like that. Now I haven't done that since then, but it was because we changed the format. But.
I haven't yet been there, but do they serve dinner? Is it a dinner theater?
Yes, they have a parlor room.
Yeah.
Well, you first enter through what is sort of like a little escape room.
Okay.
You go in, it's a very small room with books and all that, and there's a voice, and you guys got to figure out how to get out.
Okay.
And if you don't figure it out, it will show you. So
you're not going to be stuck.
Because you got to get in there and seated in the parlor, and the parlor he's got a big grand piano there, and they have like a ghost that plays the piano like Irma, but this one's called Annabelle. That's what Annabelle's the ghost.
Okay.
Right now we don't have Annabelle because we have a shortage of piano players on our island.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So you're looking for one?
I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know. That's up to Warren.
Yeah.
But so far we don't have one. Frankly, I think they should just have it play. Just be playing
like a
something.
player piano or something.
Yeah, without request. Just have it play.
Yeah, sure.
And I don't know why we're not doing that, but whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, so you get there and you can have food, drinks, desserts. They have great desserts there. If you want to come in for show only, you just come in later then, just about half hour before showtime.
So you can just have a show all day. Okay.
Yeah. If like our first show starts around 6:30, but if you're going to eat there, they recommend getting there around 5. And you get eating.
Are the ticket prices the same for adults and children, or do they have children?
We're 21 and over.
Oh, it is? Okay, because of alcohol, I guess, you're serving. There's a
No,
bar?
it's more, he just likes a mature audience.
That makes sense. I understand that.
But we had, when I first started there were family shows, but it was done by, they had a magician that lived on the island do them, and they were like during the day, once a week or something like that.
I know there are some other larger illusion shows that have been playing for a long time.
Oh, yeah. I mean, when I said about the magic shows not lasting, Jody Barron was there for, I think, 13, 14 years.
Yeah.
So, mistaken about that. I'm talking about ones that were near us, but Jody was in Kanapali. He did a great show. Mm-hmm. It was, it kind of showed the history of magic in Hawaii and all that. And
well, there was someone else I thought that had, who was Hawaiian himself, who has a show.
Well, over on Oahu.
Oahu.
Yeah.
What's his name?
Once again, I'm drawing a blank.
I can't think either, but it seems like there was somebody who had a long-running show, and he was Polynesian.
I got nothing.
Okay.
We're back to that.
You do catchphrase. And I like it.
There was a guy who did an illusion show over there for years and years.
Because I was talking to Curtis Cam, and Curtis was one.
Not Curtis.
I know that, but Curtis was telling me about this guy.
Yeah.
And I can't think of his name then now either, because I think that Curtis had worked with him or helped him or
he's
consulted
retired
or
now,
something. Yes, correct. We're talking about
he was
the same
there for
guy.
a long time.
That's what I heard.
But the Japanese market was, because he was Japanese or part Japanese, Hawaiian, I'm not sure, but he was really a big hit because he could speak Japanese too.
Yeah.
So because there's a tremendous amount of Japanese tourists there.
Yep, I'm sure it is. Well, I hope you've got nothing, because I'm going to wrap this up by closing with what my last question always is, of course, that is called the magic word. So what is it that's important to you? What's your philosophy of life? What do you live by?
Balance. I would say balance. You gotta, especially if you're married.
Yeah.
And if you got kids, you got to balance out the professional life with the personal life.
Figure out what's important.
Yeah, it's just like, so, yeah, like I mentioned earlier, when we started having kids, it was like, okay, I'll go back to Disneyland. I was doing cruise ships, I was gone and all that, but I wanted to be around when the kids were small.
Sure.
And all that. But, but you don't have that luxury of a choice all the time. Sometimes you have to do what you have to do. And you have to leave, but balance it out the best you can. And I'm doing that now because now I'm 24 weeks a year, and plus I'm doing other things, and so I bring my wife with me as much as I can. We're empty nesters now, and it's just so I don't want to be away from my wife half the year.
Well, I would agree. I
Yeah.
understand that.
So it's just balance, and then I also have a phrase I always use, and I always tell people to steal it.
Okay.
And do it. Whenever anybody ever asks me, how people go up to you and they go, "How you doing?" I always say, "Sensational, but I'll get better." And it just, and I got that from a guy named Fulton Burley, who I used to work with in the Golden Horseshoe.
Yeah,
He was the
yeah.
singer. Fulton always said, "Sensational," whenever you ask him how he's doing. And I said, "Can I say that?" And then I added, but I'll get better, because I always like taglines.
Yeah.
And I've been doing that for 40 years.
That's a good one.
Yeah, and you use it in a grocery store. You're checking out, and the checker goes, "How you doing, sir?" Like that. I go, "Sensational," and they always brings a smile to their face. And I said, "You can use it too," like that. So,
Well, that's great. That's a great magic word and a great phrase to live by.
so how you doing, Scott?
Fantastic.
No, you're sensational.
I forgot already. No.
I got nothing.
It's just I always say fantastic. That's something that people always, when they say how you doing, same thing like at the grocery store. When
Right.
I'm doing
keeps
fantastic.
them off guard a
It
little
does.
bit.
It's not like,
'Cause
I'm
people
okay.
just go,
or-
"Oh, good,"
Yeah.
like that. No, say
But if I put the emphasis in there, fantastic, and I
right.
go,
Even
it's
if
like,
you don't feel fantastic,
Yeah.
or even if you don't feel sensational, say, you know what, you will feel sensational once you see the reaction.
you're exactly right. And I tell you, it's also good to put a smile on your face and to feel sensational, feel fantastic before you go in to do a show. If you're
Yeah.
going to be, I don't care if you're doing strolling magic, doing a big stage show or whatever. I mean, it's just like what you've heard Thurston standing behind the curtain and saying, "I love you, I love you," looking at the audience, back out through the curtain. The same thing when I used to work at restaurants on a regular basis. As I would be carrying my stuff in, I would put a smile on my face, and my smile would get so broad that my teeth were showing as I walked in the front door. It's like, I'm just glad to be here, and people are going to have fun tonight. I love everybody who's going to be coming through these doors.
Yeah, it's putting a forced smile on your face can actually change your whole mood.
It can.
Yeah, it does.
People have said that before about on telephones. When you talk, that smile will come across if you're smiling as you're
absolutely.
talking. Yeah.
When I was, hey, I know we're trying to wrap up, but I mean, when I was a character and I was in, I had a goofy head on me, I would, I'd be in there smiling.
Yeah.
Oh, they can't see it, or doing expressions when I'm doing bits, like they can see me do these funny faces.
Takes, yeah.
But it reads even through a mask somehow through my body movements or something. It's amazing. It was something I kind of caught on to. I was like, it seems to read anyways. I don't know what it is.
Sensational.
Amazing. Sensational.
So with the Magic Word Podcast, that's my friend and yours, Dana Daniels. This is Scotty out. Perfect.
All right, let's tape it.
Yeah, now we're ready.
I want to thank my guest, Dana Daniels, for carving some time out of his schedule to sit down with me and chat about his background and kind of what he's been doing. And I also want to wish him good luck in the future with whatever endeavors and opportunities present themselves for him. And one little addendum I need to put in this episode, and that is the name of the club that we could not come up with a little bit earlier when we were trying to think of where Carrie Pollock's club is located. That is called the Comedy Magic Cabaret, located located in Hilton Head, South Carolina. Sorry about that, Carrie. But if any of you get a chance to be anywhere near the area, please go and check it out. You'll have a great time there. And I want to thank each of you in advance for all of the help that I know that you're going to be helping Warren and Annabelle's with through their GoFundMe account, because I know I have some of the best listeners in the world for any podcast. And I also, along that line, I want to thank all of you for being with me for these last 11 years. We are now going into our 12th year. I believe it was around August the 11th or 12th of 2012 whenever we first started with the podcast. And here we are just finishing up our 11th year, starting into our 12th year. So I want to thank all of you again for helping, encouraging me and keeping me going for all these years, and for coming back and listening from week to week. So I look forward to doing it for at least another 11 years if I can. And I hope you come along with me for the ride each week as well. Well, please do go to the website and help Warren and Annabelle's, because there are many who are in such desperate need. I will also mention, by the way, I understand that Al the Only and Lori had lost their home. They too had a home there in Lanai, and it has been burned to the ground. So they are also in need. If you want to reach out and say something or help Al and Lori in any way that you can as well. I know that's tough for them and all of the residents there on the island. Well, next week we're going to have another great guest, one of whom was going to be for this week that I've had to postpone for a little bit. And I look forward to bringing this wonderful guest to you. And if you'd like to know who it is, make sure that you subscribe to our pod letter. If you go to themagicwordpodcast.com, not only will you find a link where you can go to that GoFundMe page, but also you can subscribe to the pod letter, so this way you know from week to week who it is that we're going to be talking with, and some suggestions from the archives in the past. So until next week, stay well, get booked, and remember to be sensational. This is Scotty out.